I hopped off of the Naruto train fairly early, and arguably exactly when it got bad. I liked the first couple arcs. The Bridge is a wonderful first story about idiot kids in way over their heads, and the tuning exams. I mean, it's got Rock Lee versus Gaara. But pretty quickly, the show would spiral into the Sasuke Uchiha show, and my interest would plummet, as it had for many others. I never really had an interest in returning to Naruto. I didn't really care to find out the details of how it ended, and caught little bits and pieces, mostly about the Uchihas, that further drove my disinterest. Then I saw one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in my life. A clip of Boruto, Naruto's sequel show, where Sasuke defends a talking velociraptor that looks exactly like Blue from the bad Jurassic Park movies to a plagiaristic degree, and the ninjas need to team up to defeat an army of evil ninja pterodactyls. I sent this masterpiece of insanity to my friend Grant, who toughed out Naruto more than any sane man should, and he had a simple response. Guess our next Let's Play is Ninja Storm, because oh boy, if you think that's crazy. Subscribe to him, by the way. Our Let's Play of this is going to be wild because, holy shit, Naruto gets bonkers. And so here we are. Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 Road to Boruto, the complete version of Ninja Storm 4 with all of its DLC, covering the 4th Shinobi World War Climax, Birth of the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, and the Kage Otsutsuki Strikes arcs of Shippuden. 3 filler scenarios made for this game, the Adventure Mode, Shikamaru's Tale and Gaara's Tale, and the movie Boruto Naruto the Movie, and was released in 2016 for PS4, Xbox One, and PC, and for the Switch 4 years later. Goddamn, that's a gap. This series was developed by CyberConnect 2, a Japanese company that works mostly with licensed games nowadays. They developed the Dot Hack games for Namco back in the day, and they've done a few other things, but they've mostly made licensed anime stuff since Naruto blew up and became their bread and butter. They also did a Demon Slayer one and JoJo's All-Star Battle, but that's all kind of besides the point. It's also worth noting that the newest game in the series, released in 2023, Naruto Cross Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections, which is on everything, is a semi-remake compilation of this game as well as the 3 before it, with some minor changes, so keep that in mind, I suppose, but it seems like generally people do not like Connections, and I haven't played it, so there you go. Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 is a pretty run-of-the-mill arena fighter. It's an incredibly stripped-back and simple fighting game that's intended to be much more style than substance, although admittedly the production value here is pretty crazy. This ain't Tekken, there's no convoluted combo strings, each character has a combo that goes as long as it needs to, a throw, which I assume is the counterplay for blocking, which seems like a mechanic that doesn't get much use, blocking, which seems like a mechanic that doesn't get much use, a jump, throwing weapons, which seemingly serve only to bait an opponent who's not good at the game into using a substitution jutsu, substitution, which teleports you out of a sticky situation but can only be used 4 times before needing to recharge, usually by taking damage, and the triangle button, which is like the jutsu button, I guess. Held, it charges chakra to fill the meter. Tapped, it changes the properties of your moves, and this is where the game gets interesting. Having chakra changes your jump into a forward or backwards dash. The backwards dash is mostly a punishment. A core element of the gameplay is dash canceling to restart a combo. The optimal point for this depends character to character, especially when it comes to characters who teleport around a target or jump in the air, which respectively have the potential to force you to cancel a dash in a different direction instead of just holding left, or begin an air combo, which are generally harder to continue chaining. Chakra can also be used to activate jutsu moves. Each character only has one at any given time, but more important characters tend to be allowed to pick from a selection of several at the start of a match. These typically serve as a strong combo ender that allow you to create distance or knock down an enemy in order to buy time to regenerate chakra, although not all chakra moves are created equal. In general, fast projectiles are king. They're very free bait for substitution, good for buying you a bit of time to continue regenerating chakra, and if on your 2 secondary characters are fantastic assist moves. 1 for the obvious benefit of buying you time and eating substitutions. 2, these characters don't tend to move when summoned, unlike characters who have to get in close. In a pinch, they absorb dashes, combos, projectiles, even secret techniques, which dashing type assists can do too, just not as reliably by a long shot. Secret techniques are super moves. They hit hard, usually have comically long cinematics, and holy shit, they went all out on making these things look incredible. Like with jutsus, fast range ones tend to be stronger, although typically you're not raw dogging these because of the jutsu investment. Canceling a combo into them will be optimal so often that unless it's an embarrassingly short range one that might be prone to whiffing, the quality of these is fairly universal. Halfway notable is Awakening. For a majority of characters, Awakening is just a short buff that can be activated after losing your first health bar. Typically, the character becomes faster, harder hitting, and maybe gets an extra jutsu move on the D-pad, at the cost of losing your secret technique for its duration. However, some characters do have real transformations. The guys who have them tend to turn into giant beasts who are slow and heavy. They're often a bit of a downgrade, combo food really, and often locked into lengthy attacks that leave them pretty vulnerable. The strength can be a nice payoff, but it rarely pans out when the speed is so low and speed is so valuable. Gimmick characters are a very limited set in this roster. A good portion of this game's ridiculously sized roster play fairly identically, with only some minor changes in the timing of optimal dash cancels and how good their jutsus are. And the gimmick characters that do exist tend to still play into those same playstyles with a tiny bit of spice on top. Despite the game's fairly limited set of actions and systems, it actually is quite fun though. The dash and substitution rock paper scissors creates exciting and dynamic fights that involve numerous tech chases as you try to burn your opponent's resources, either draining their chakra or substitutions for huge payoffs, or sometimes just waiting for themselves to misplay or lock themselves into an animation so you can substitute into your own degenerate combo chain. It's impressively fast-paced and energetic, and topped off with cool, flashy, special moves. and supers. The game's single-player offering is divided into two parts. The story mode is a collection of missions and cutscenes in a menu. I really like this. Occasional branches are offered for notable side fights, which let you play as other characters outside of Naruto and Sasuke and maybe a Kakashi or two, or when two characters are doing different things simultaneously, but also there's some pretty crazy spectacle in the fights in their own right, with a few moments given unique gameplay or even a few story-exclusive characters, and with lots of little cutscenes and quick-time events thrown in to add to the cinematic feel. The alternate gameplay is typically kaiju battles with giant transformations. When it's giant on giant, it's not so obviously sluggish, and the spectacle works really well, especially when it comes to ones like the first fight between Madara and the first Hokage. There's also a giant aerial battle. It's halfway between a shoot 'em up and a regular giant battle, and a bit awkward, honestly, but damn, is it cool. Some of the fights just have a lot of nice extra effort poured in. Naruto and Sasuke's final fight has both of them slowly working backwards from their final Shippuden forms, all the way to them being squabbling kids as it progresses, which not only shows off like a thematic element of the story, but is very interesting visually and in a gameplay sense. Naruto and Sasuke also have a special dual character for the big final boss. The opening fight is full of flash. It's impressive how much care was dumped into retelling the story of Naruto. Discovering the story of late era Naruto was a trip for me. When I had last seen Naruto, it was the story of a bunch of rookie kids getting in way over their head. The events covered in this game are entirely centered around the presence of Kaguya Otsutsuki, an alien, like from outer space, who gave humanity the ability to use chakra, and use her little blob children, the white and black Zetsu, to manipulate the reincarnated zombie of Madara Uchiha, one of the first ninja ever, and Obito Uchiha, Kakashi's long-thought dead childhood friend, into being weapons to harvest all the chakra she had given humanity back, in part by fusing with the 10-tailed beast, a giant tree monster, to put everyone into comas so they could be mommy milked for the jutsu. Orochimaru, the original big bad of the series, comes back from the dead after birthing himself in a guy named Kabuto, and revives all of the past Hokage, including Naruto's dead dad. And then they all team up to fight Kaguya by turning into a giant flying Gundam samurai fox. And you may have seen this image before, because in the end, Obito is forgiven through the power of Tak no Jutsu. And that's not even all the lunacy going on, it's just sheer insanity end to end. As for the other modes, the adventure mode follows the format of the prior games a lot more closely. It's loosely an open world, although only the Hidden Leaf Village is really fleshed out, with most other locations being one room, and it has a short story following the main story's events, where Sakura tries to help Naruto and Hinata get together by dragging them on pointless missions, which has gameplay via everyone remembering the good old days of prior important battles. The story itself isn't much to write home about, but there are a variety of side quests that lead to fights with characters the story mode otherwise wouldn't have you fight. namely good guys. Wandering around the openish world is fairly whatever to me, but the addition of memory fragments as a collectible is cool. 54 more fights that were significant to the series before the time this game takes place in, that give you a selection of unique characters to play as and to fight against, which offers some interesting quick looks at this game's titanic roster. The adventure mode format would also be extended to the DLC stories, with their own stories to tell and side missions. Shikamaru's tale, The Fresh Green of the Hidden Leaf, follows Kakashi pushing the next generation forward subtly through his assistant Shikamaru, who you play as throughout the story. And Gaara's tale, Bonds of the Sandy Sea, is about the friends we made along the way, from the perspective of Gaara and his siblings. And then there's Boruto's tale, Road to Boruto, which adapts the movie Boruto Naruto the Movie. What an awful fucking title. As Naruto has become a deadbeat dad and his little idiot son desperately tries to get his attention, and as a larger DLC pack also includes a new VR simulator with tons of fight against notable teams throughout the series, with Boruto being allowed to team up with any two characters to defeat them. This side quest also ends on a callback to Naruto's final fight with Sasuke, as his own son watches him go back to an annoying young kid for a surprisingly nice conclusion to their regrowing bonds. The adventure mode stories do feel fairly secondary. There's a lot of mindless running around to pad time, little fetch quests, stuff like that mostly exists to fill time, and the budget clearly went to the main story, but I admittedly did enjoy a lot of fights that the adventure modes provided with characters that hadn't come up much, and there are some cute interactions with the various characters that make the scenarios a bit more enjoyable. I guess that's my cue to talk about the roster. It's really, something. Most of these characters are almost entirely foreign to me. If they didn't participate in the tuning exams or feature prominently in this video game story that I played, I don't know them. Characters having numerous variants isn't uncommon. Naruto and Sasuke get the most for obvious reasons, but a few other very notable characters like Obito have a decent amount, and characters who appeared early on in the series almost all have a child form. These variants are admirably separated from their main forms, often featuring entirely different movesets, sometimes even for their transformations, unique jutsus or secret techniques, and different combo timing. I guess we'll just start with Naruto. His name is on the box. Naruto is the alleged main character of the series. Sasuke often challenges that spot as I understand it, but he's a young orphan ninja who uses the power of friendship and a nine-tailed demon fox named Kurama sealed inside of him to defeat a space alien and become the Hokage. Naruto Uzumaki, child form, is the initial version of Naruto from the series. This version is not very good. The shadow clones lead to messy reset points and accidental air combos very often. Rasengan is a charging attack. It can be charged for a bit of extra damage, but when you would manage that, I don't really know. And his alternate jutsu isn't much better. It's a projectile, but he jumps to it and attempts to do a very long, mostly non-cancelable combo beyond using up a substitution, so it gets punished very hard. And his special technique, Naruto Uzumaki 2K Barrage, is a fairly average dashing type super. His one-tailed form by awakening isn't much better. It's faster and harder hitting and without shadow clones, but the erratic jumping movement still makes the cancel points hard to find, and his special is still Rasengan. Naruto Uzumaki Shippuden is the post-time skip Naruto, and itself has 3 subforms because, his name is on the box. All 3 of these only have the Rasengan, which isn't a great start, and only differ on their secret techniques and awakened forms. Beyond that, they're all spastic shadow clone combos. Standard Shippuden Naruto has 2 secret techniques, both of them dashing types, but can also awaken into Four Tails Naruto, who is schizophrenically fast. But the projectile is a fast laser that might make it worth it. The Tailed Beast Bomb variant also has a quick dashing super, but this one looks cooler than hell. His awakened form is the Nine Tails Chakra form, which turns him into a glowing Super Saiyan. He's faster and even more jumpy and jerky, which doesn't bode terribly well for chaining him in reasonable ways. The final variant of Shippuden Naruto, Sage Art Massive Rasengan Barrage, has the worst secret technique in that it's a short-range slash to initiate it, and also becomes Ninetales Chakra mode, although he did feel a bit more controllable than the prior variants. The Sage Mode variant actually has a surprisingly measured combo despite the shadow clones, which makes it one of the better Naruto variants, I think. And while his jutsus are Rasengan variants, Rasengan Barrage makes up for its slow start with having multiple hits, potentially eating up multiple substitutions, and the Rasen Sharingan is a solid super as a projectile. This variant awakens into Six-Tailed Naruto, whose 4-hit combo is nearly impossible to chain, which more or less stifles its usability, although being able to spam a laser is very decent. Kurama Link mode starts Naruto in his Nine Tails Chakra mode, the glowy one, which makes him feel a bit uncontrollable, but he does finally get a projectile in the mini-tailed Beast Bomb, which is admittedly quick to use in a pinch, but with the caveat that his super has incredibly short range. This is the first one that actually awakens into Kurama, who is both a bit spastic and giant, but the ability to spam Tailed Beast Bomb Barrage is pretty slick for burning through substitutions, so the trade is decently worthwhile in this case. Sage of the Six Paths Naruto is the final form of Naruto proper being used in the fight against Kaguya. The combo is fairly unwieldy and accidentally starts air combos often, but the projectile is a very, very nice thing to have, and the short range of the super is offset by both of them being some of the absolute coolest in the game. Also, you better get used to this form, you're going to see it a lot in the final few chapters of the story. And the Kurama variant here is a bit less jumpy and has a different but very solidly sized projectile. Naruto the Last is our first look at an adult Naruto with no shadow clones, making his combos a bit less erratic, but notably, since he uses shadow clones to do his Rasengan for him, it's effectively a slow projectile, which is better than most of the Naruto variants. This variant becomes Tailed Beast Sage mode, adult form, and it's actually a pretty great awakening with a solid combo that switches what side Naruto is on for tech chases, and a solid projectile. This is probably the strongest Naruto by a pretty substantial amount. Finally, Naruto Road to Boruto is the fully adult Hokage version of Naruto. Having Rasengan seems bad, but he can actually charge it into a pretty great projectile as a mix-up, and the alternate Rasengan is also a projectile in its own right, giving him some decent options. Plus, for as ass as the range is on his super, it sure is worth it. This variant also becomes Kurama, who's still a clunky slow mess with a good projectile. Sakura Hirano is the third original member of Team 7, Naruto's ninja squad. You would think that would pose her as an important character, but as best I can tell, not really. She loves Sasuke and eventually gets a kid before he leaves her to marry a dinosaur. Sakura has two variants. Her young form is one of the more interesting characters, with a sort of trap-based game plan. Her booby traps linger on the field, and multiple can be set, which forces her opponent to dash carefully to close the distance, and they can also be placed quickly to end a dash in progress. Well, her super has very low range and is entirely stationary, but lingers for a fairly long time around her, which also acts as an anti-dashing trap. She's not a tremendously cool character, but it is a nice bit of variety. Adult Sakura is a very melee-focused character, which is already kind of a pain, but one of her supers is at least a grounded projectile, and I did like her awakening form a lot. Not only does she have natural chakra and health regeneration while awakened, but her special move has the very unique property of not causing knockback or a knockdown, just a brief bit of stun, which makes it a potential element in very long combo chains, even if just ending the dash chain on it or doing an extra combo at the end. She feels strong, but is very reliant on said unique move when awakened. Sai Yamanaka is the fourth member of Team 7, replacing Sasuke when he pulls an Ethan Hunt and goes rogue. For some reason, he's also, like, ghostly pale. I don't know if that's, like, a special ability or something. Like, everyone has magic eyes, but he might just look like that. He's an artist guy, so his jutsus are centered on bringing his drawings to life, which looks interesting if nothing else. His main jutsu, being 3 charging ink dogs, is solid, as the triple projectile sometimes forces multiple substitutions or gets a hit in after one, and he gains an extra attack on awakening in these big, guys, who are pretty quick large projectiles in their own right. He seems very okay. Kakashi Hitake is the head of Team 7, the mentor and wise if kinda aloof leader of Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke, and also Sai, probably. And also has an important backstory as he was initially on a team with Obito, who would go on to be Hitler, and even got the Sharingan from Obito, as only Uchiha normally have it, but stealing people's eyes is a fairly common occurrence in this setting. Child Kakashi is nothing special. He has a dash in Chidori or Fireball, a very strong projectile, and a standard dashing special. Adult Kakashi has 2 forms and a frankly impressive amount of jutsu and special techniques, allowing for quite a bit of mixing and matching. For jutsus, he has everything from fast dashes with Lightning Blade, which can be charged into a projectile, Fireball, Fanged Pursuit, a grounded projectile, and Water Style, a medium speed projectile. The standard Kakashi deviates a bit at the supers, with long range dashes exclusively, and in his awakening, which gives him an extra projectile and Shadow Clones dragging an electric wire, which covers a fairly broad range, but generally, double Sharingan is kinda better, primarily because his Kamui super is really, really cool. His Susanoo form, which makes dudes into like giant Angel Tengu Samurai Gundams is a bit less clumsy than Kurama. It just feels a little less chaotic, perhaps for its humanoid form. But the special move being Lightning Blade, while cool, is a bit of a downgrade from the spammability of Kurama's projectiles. The big guys are just so hard to get good value out of, I think. Still, any character with Fireball is probably pretty decent. Mike Guy is the goober leader of Team Guy. He's the endlessly positive dork who, through sheer force of will, has managed to become one of the strongest ninja in the world without much ability to use ninjutsu, instead fighting entirely with martial arts and the ability to open his chakra gates to burn his life force for power. He's one of the best characters in the series, if only for being maybe the only character in the series besides his protege to get there with sheer hard work instead of bloodline magic. More on that eventually. Mike Guy is a bit held back by a lack of range, although I think he's still fairly good, even his weaker standard variants. His standard jutsu, Dynamic Entry, is far and away one of the fastest dashing style attacks, and his 8 gate modes makes him faster and gives him a projectile wind blast from the D-pad for some flexibility. However, there's very little reason not to play as the Great Ninja War variant, who has a new secret technique that is a projectile, and the coolest thing ever, and one of the most bonkers awakenings at a cost. 8 Gates release makes Guy stronger and faster, gives him a titanic dragon punch that covers the entire screen, and he still has the wind blast to boot. It's a game-finishingly powerful effect, but after it wears off, he's put into stun for a solid few seconds, so if it's not enough, it's probably over. Very, very cool character from a design standpoint. Yamato, I have no idea who this guy is. Apparently when Kakashi was out of commission, he served as a replacement team leader for a time, and seemingly now just kinda hangs out. He kinda looks like a background character. Yamato is pretty boring. He's fairly serviceable and average. His log projectile's fast enough. His awakening turns into a jank hammer smash that tends to whiff. He isn't awful, just kind of Yamato. Shikamaru Nara is the lazy but smart head of Team 10 and eventually the Hokage's assistant. He utilizes shadows as his main weapon, which makes him like the 4th or 5th coolest character by default, although he's a pretty standard character to play as all around. His child version has a nice projectile, his adult version can drop tracking bombs when awakened, and has a cool special technique. He's very fine. Choji Akamichi is another member of Team 10. He's the fat one, and goes human boulder. He's also a fighter with literally no range. Human boulder, more so in its adult form over his child form, is a pretty good dashing jutsu. It's fast and annoying, but both of his special techniques have miserably short range, which exclusively forces them to be combo enders from an already winning position. There's no dropping one to make some room in a desperate situation. Adult Choji's awakening is cool. He does something called butterfly mode, which makes him into a reasonably fast character, although he still lacks any range and it doesn't quite save him. Ino Yamanaka is the final member of Team 10 and sorta Sakura's love rival early on, before she eventually gives up on Sasuke and marries fake Sasuke Sai. She's not very interesting as far as I've seen, and isn't much more than standard fare to play as. Child Ino is a serviceable character. Adult Ino is maybe a bit above standard. Her projectiles linger in the ground before exploding as traps, but she isn't that interesting to use. Neji Hyuga is the head of Team 3 under Mike Guy. He's a very powerful ninja who starts out very angry at being a lesser member of the Hyuga clan, becomes a nice guy, and then dies for Naruto and his cousin Hinata. Child Neji and Adult Neji are almost identical, probably the closest for any pair of adult and child characters, with one additional move for the Adult Neji. Both of his jutsus are cool. One is a short-range lingering attack, the palm rotation, which can be used offensively against dashes, which is pretty exciting, and he has a fast projectile and a wind blast, which is, good. He even gets both when awakened. He's a real solid character either way, and generally a pretty cool guy. Rock Lee is the best character in Naruto. No jutsu, the mini Mike Guy just works harder than anyone else and gets the best fight in the series against the jutsu prodigy Gaara for it. The only real issue is that you need jutsu to become a chunin, but maybe Mike Guy signed a slip for him or something, saying he has a disability or something. As a playable character, he's just a slightly worse Mike Guy. Child Lee more so. His special technique tends to whiff very hard. Adult Lee gets dynamic entry on awakening, but Mike Guy always has that, He's just, unfortunately, a worse clone of Mike Guy. The final member of Team 3 is 1010. This character was objectively around since the start of the series. and I do not remember her even slightly. She's the Ninja Tool Girl and acts as something of a trap character, especially her adult version, who can throw lingering bombs all over and has an impressively interesting awakening, with even more bombs and a fan that can shoot a fast projectile and a fast water blast. She's honestly, like, way better than you would think 1010 would be, because she is, like, probably the closest you could be to being a background extra without actually being one. Kiba Inazuke is the dog guy and a member of Team 8. He technically has 3 forms. His child form and Road to Boruto forms fight alongside Akamaru and Akemaru, respectively, as puppies, who don't particularly aid him outside of his jutsus and special technique, as he's mostly just a close-range fighter, while the middle-era Kiba fights alongside adult Akamaru, who can act as a projectile from wherever he happens to be on the stage when awakened, which is an interesting way to catch opponents off guard, although he's largely a pretty decent melee character before that. Shino Aburame, also a member of Team 8, is the bug guy. This game has a fun recurring gag in Shikamaru's story where everyone forgets about him. That's about all I have to say. Shino's primary playstyle is centered on chasing in his adult and child forms, both of which have extraordinarily slow chasing projectiles. Adult Shino even for his secret technique, which can lock opponents down for follow-ups. And the adult form even gets the rare no knockdown projectile for combo starting. It's a really odd playstyle that's kind of interesting, although the feasibility of it seems rather questionable if you were to use it against a real person, since, like, optimally you kind of just run into the projectile and shadow clone out of it before Shino has a chance to actually follow up on it. Hinata Hyuga is the heiress of the Hyuga clan until she marries Naruto. She fights Neji at some point, but becomes more important after I quit watching the series. Both adult and child Hinata are basically identical to Neji's respective forms with only very minor differences. I guess it just depends whose ass you want to look at. Azuma Saratobi was the head of Team 10. At some point, he dies. He was also the son of the third Hokage and probably a nice guy. On the surface, there isn't that much to say about him. He has a good projectile and he's cool, but his awakening kinda goes crazy. Just giving every single step of his combo a fast, long-distance projectile makes him a real menace during its duration. It's one of the coolest awakenings in the game by a long shot, and the character's not bad enough to completely write off playing him just for the awakening. Konohamaru Saratobi is Azuma's son, and a big Naruto fanboy. For some reason, he's only playable in his child form in this game, despite his adult form being in the Road to Boruto DLC as the secret final boss. He's not even unique in this regard. Several characters have non-playable versions, like an earlier version of Kakashi, the tag team Naruto and Sasuke, Black Zetsu Obito, this bubble kid from Boruto, Shikamaru's son, as well as like a bunch of giant characters, which are more understandable. Like, I don't know, you'd have to have like a whole separate mode to have the 4 giant characters, like full-size Kurama and this rock monster thing fight, and that's probably not worth it. Still, I don't know why they'd put all the work in to make them and then not let you use them, but whatever, I guess. Konohamaru is pretty standard, no projectiles, nothing crazy going on at all really, but his awakening does give him a neat delayed projectile that gives him a bit of trapping, I suppose. Nothing much to say on that one. Shisui Uchiha is a lore character as best I can tell, dying well before the start of the story to protect both the Uchiha clan and the Hidden Leaf, which eventually led to Itachi's destruction of the Uchiha clan. He was also comically overpowered apparently. Teleporting is a specialty, and while it makes him erratic to chain combos with, it also makes him erratic to fight against. His unique jutsu is a fast teleport that's kinda hard to deal with, and he gets Fireball because, you know, why not? It's one of the best jutsus in the game. Also, his secret technique is very cool. The Sharingan ones usually are because they do the whole, like, eye zoom out thing. It's very stylish. Iruka Umino was Naruto's mentor early on at Ninja Academy. Sometimes I wonder how these societies thrive economically, and he had a soft spot for Naruto throughout. Iruka is also a trap character, with his jutsu being a long lingering trap that explodes when stepped on, but it rarely connects on its own because it kind of places at an odd distance from him, and unlike the other characters, he doesn't actually have to throw it out or anything. Like with 1010's bombs, they're projectiles before they linger, so they have a little more usage in like combos and stuff. It's not bad. Like the trap characters are generally pretty good because they stave off advancing and buy you time, but the other trap characters can use their traps much more aggressively too, as they tend to be projectiles. Iruka also happens to generally have funnier animations owing to his place early on in the story dealing with bratty kid Naruto, which is a plus for an otherwise pretty middle of the road character. Kushina Uzumaki was Naruto's mom and a prior host for Kurama, who died stealing Kurama and her son. She's fine. She has a cool secret technique and attacks with a frying pan, which is something, and has a transformation with her awakening that actually makes her intimidating as her rage takes over, giving her some really solid projectiles with these giant chain things and switching up her vibe entirely. She's kinda neat. Jiraiya is a wise sage and pervert who becomes Naruto's mentor early on, teaching him to better work with Kurama and the Rasengan. His standard form is nothing to write home about. If anything, he's fairly slow, but his Sage Mode awakening makes him a menace very briefly. Teleporting, extreme speed, a slew of projectiles including a constant stream of water, a command grab. Playing a mediocre character to get payoff on awakening is probably not worthwhile, but the payoff is pretty fucking immense here. Time for another dense one. Obito Uchiha was a teammate of Kakashi who seemingly died on an early mission of their team as a kid, but he was saved by a giant alien tree mommy Kaguya and girl boss gaslit by her Zetsus into becoming Hitler after he saw Kakashi kill their teammate, but eventually he gets redeemed. Obito is drowning in alternate forms. Young Obito is basically child Sasuke with a very cool secret technique. Masked Man is Obito when everyone thought he was dead. He's a fine, cool special again. Toby is also a disguised Obito when he was playing something of a fool to disguise his power. This variant is basically a Looney Tune until he awakens, where he turns into the next Toby variant, which makes him amusing to watch if nothing else. Toby's Great Ninja War variant is much more normal. He's got a cool secret technique, he's fast, and his awakening is crazy, giving him 2 uses of Fireball, and his unique jutsu gets even stronger. 3 fire pillars that track the opponent down. He's a pretty great character in general. Obito Uchiha Rampaging is a pretty normal good character, fast projectiles, cool supers. He's strong and solid. Unmasked Obito is the spastic teleporter with a cool super and an interesting projectile that gets bigger the further it goes, but isn't the most interesting variant to play as. The most interesting by a long shot is Obito Uchiha Ten Tails Jinchuriki, which makes him into a white alien man. His I don't know what these are, black magic orb things give him pretty disjointed attacks, and he just gets a giant fast laser as a jutsu, which is pretty fucking good. His awakening also gives him a gigantic sword that gives him incredible range and shoots out a projectile during his combo because he needed to be even better than he was. He's all in all an incredibly strong character with cool animations, and he makes for a great support with his laser spam. Rin Nohara was the final member of Kakashi and Obito's team, who tricked Kakashi into killing her as she was the carrier of the 3-tailed beast Asobu. She's pretty okay. Her log projectile is decent and she has a cool special technique, but Asobu, as with the other tailed beasts, is a bit clunky. The giant turtle has a decent projectile and a human boulder, but it's certainly not dragging Rin up to being an Obito tier threat. If you thought Naruto and Obito had a comical amount of variance, Sasuke is proof that it can always be worse. Sasuke Uchiha is the 3rd member of Team 7 and is shuffled all over the board otherwise, becoming kinda evil, joining Itachi for a time, leaving the Hidden Leaf Village like 15 times, knocking up Sakura, marrying a dinosaur. Despite the series name, he's more or less the main character, as whenever he's off screen, Naruto just spends all his time asking, "Where's Sasuke?" There are a comical amount of Sasukes, with even child Sasuke having 2 variants. A standard one that has Fireball Jutsu and an all-around solid kit that makes him maybe the best of the child characters, and the later Curse Mark Stage 2 one, which lets Sasuke turn into a gross angel foreskin monster, which is a transformation that's arguably worse than the standard awakening of just getting slightly faster. Pretty much every variant of Sasuke has Fireball or the enhanced version Inferno Fireball, so they're all pretty much playable, but the adult ones just tend to pack on the moves and solid awakenings. Normal adult Sasuke also has Curse Mark, if you really love bad air combos. Sasuke the Taka. No, I don't know what a Taka is. Gains a projectile on awakening, albeit not a great one. Sasuke 5 Kage Summit can become half a Susanoo and has a decent secret technique that teleports in underneath opponents, which can be kind of hard to deal with, although he is a bit of a lesser Sasuke. Sasuke Eternal Manga Sharingan, a collection of words that are definitely not in the Bible, has this sick super and can become the humanoid Susanoo, which is okay for a transformation. The Rinne Sharingan version has another very cool super and is the first to have full body Susanoo, which has nice range, if nothing else, in its basic combo. Sasuke the Last has this thing. Very cool Sasuke. And last but certainly not least, Road to Boruto Sasuke feels like one of the best characters in the game. He's cool as hell with this black hole thing in his combos. Fast, Inferno Fireball is probably the best special move in the game. This animation is the coolest in the game. If so comically long, it gets to an extent that it actually makes it kind of awful to use because it doubles the length of an average match if you use it once. And even the Susanoo is fine. He's a very, very strong character in general. As far as a character in this game can be, you know, they don't get too far away from each other. Anyways, Orochimaru. He was something of a scientist himself who performed evil experiments. He turned Sasuke into the foreskin angel thing, among other characters who were also turned into foreskin monsters. And he wanted to steal Sasuke's body, but eventually, after coming back from the dead by planting his sperm in Kabuto, he decides to be chill. And despite being Naruto Himmler, Naruto's like, nah, this guy's chill now, it's all good. And he just lives in the Leaf Village, and everyone is like, hey Himmler, glad you're back. I don't know that he's immensely good, but I do like him. The snake transformations offer some cool animations. This snake projectile thing feels kinda nasty since it's so long that it effectively lingers, even more so when awakened. He's decent at least, if not the most flashy character. Kabuto Yakushi is a medical ninja who became Orochimaru's second in command, and also some kind of ninja necromancer who revives every major character ever for the final battle. First, when he's evil, he revives all of the bad guys, and then he gets put in gay baby jail, and then he becomes good and brings back all of the good people after he thought really hard about being a good person, because that's Naruto. Kabuto gets 3 variants because apparently this guy is important enough. Early Kabuto is about as average a character as it gets. Snake Cloak has Orochimaru's snake projectile when awakened, although you could just play Orochimaru. And Sage Mode is the one worth mentioning. My man is throwing snakes everywhere, and his awakening is shockingly good. The spiderweb traps uniquely hold opponents in place to set them up for combos. He throws out even more snakes that chase even better, and he's actually just kind of cool. I don't know, there's something about him just throwing out all these snakes and spiderwebs. Being cool significantly boosts a character's place in my roster tier list because so many of them play very similar. Suigetsu Huzuki, he's apparently Sasuke's friend and part of his weird little group after they ditch Orochimaru. He's a pretty standard character, but when he awakens, he gets a giant jack-off arm and becomes kinda good because he can just spam a ton of water projectiles, but he's not that interesting to use outside of getting a giant jack-off arm. Jugo is another one of Sasuke's guys. He's like a rock man, I guess. His Big O punch is pretty cool. Anything that reminds me of Big O automatically goes up 1 point. He's fine enough, but he has absolutely no range. Karen is the final member of Sasuke's squad and yet another Sasuke fangirl who gets cucked by a velociraptor. She's pretty trash until she awakens. Her perfume spray is too short range and her secret technique is too slow, but for some reason her awakening just gives her a fucking laser of perfume. It's a good move. Also, fun detail, her awakening is her getting pissed off at her opponent, unless it's Sasuke where she gets powered up by love. It doesn't actually change how she plays, it just changes the initial animation, but I thought that was kind of cool. The first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, is the first Hokage. He founded the Hidden Leaf Village with his best friend turned ultimate rival, Madara Uchiha, who is Kaguya's right-hand man. For some reason, Senju's alive and not alive versions are separate variants. His live version isn't anything to write home about, but the delayed shuriken spam jutsu is kinda neat, but reanimated Senju's kinda crazy. The tree dragon jutsu is nice and fast, and his comically long named secret technique is crazy cool. Plus he has projectiles in his combo on Awakening. It's good stuff, he's a good character. The second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, is Hashirama's younger brother and took over for him after his death. He's fairly standard for a water ninja, getting decently speedy projectiles and a cool super. On Awakening, he spams more. He's pretty good. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, is Azuma's father and the third Hokage, and a really powerful ninja. He's capable of using pretty much every type of jutsu, as seen in one of his supers, and doing whatever this is, which looks really fucking cool. Also, he has Fireball, so he's basically a good character, and also has a solid Awakening with a huge fire attack and delayed shuriken spam. He's got like all of the cool moves all at once. That's kind of all you need. Minato Namikaze was the fourth Hokage and Naruto's dad, who died sealing Kurama within him. I assume he goes by Namikaze solely for the sake of the twist, because somehow Naruto never realized that this spiky yellow-haired guy who looks just like him was his dad, even though his face is on the mountain above the Hidden Leaf Village. And Naruto just never looked up. Naruto's really dumb. Like with the first Hokage, Minato differs between his alive and undead form, although the primary characteristic of Minato is speed. He's a teleporter dude with tough combo chains, even more so when awakened, and even more so when using the nine-tailed chakra in his undead form. He does lack range in general, but his unwieldiness can make him exciting and difficult to deal with. Tsunade is the fifth Hokage and uses magic to keep herself looking young, but is also strong, I guess, and she has a gambling addiction, and she appeared like once when I stopped watching. In-game, she's pretty awful. Her special technique has no range, her jutsu is an awkward ground slam, and the only cool thing she has is a no knockdown jutsu when awakened. She's somehow an even less exciting version of Sakura, which is a pretty low bar. Danzo Shimura is the head of Roots, a secret organization that exists in the shadows of the Hidden Leaf Village, running dirty jobs that other ninjas aren't willing or able to do. He's also apparently a villain, as he has the zombie of the first Hokage built into his arm and is attempting to gain power by collecting Sharingan eyes, because you can just steal people's OP birth magic that way in this setting. He's actually kind of cracked. His wind projectile is as fast as the fireball. His secret technique is cool as hell. I have no idea what's going on with this though. And his awakening gives him a bigger wind blast, a giant area of effect attack, and some Sharingan thing that briefly makes him intangible. He's, I think, very, very strong, even if he's kind of unassuming from a glance. Gaara was one of the first major villains of Naruto, acting as Rock Lee's foil and later attempting to destroy the Hidden Leaf Village with the use of the one-tailed beast Shukaku, which made him a prodigy in controlling sand through his jutsus, although at some point Naruto saved him and he became a nice guy, and the fifth Kazekage of the village hidden in the sand, a recurring storyline in Naruto. Across all of Gaara's three forms, Child, White Robe, and Great Ninja War, his primary attacks are disjointed thanks to the sand, which does offer him a small bit of protection from opponents' attacks. The Gaaras all have the same strengths and weaknesses. Their disjointed attacks are offset by being slow and fairly predictable, their jutsus tend to be strong projectiles, while their secret techniques lack range, and they only differ on awakening. Child Gaara just gets faster, White Robe becomes Shukaku, who is one of the better tailed beasts for his fast projectile spam, and Great Ninja War takes disjointed to a whole new level with his titanic half-screen attacks and projectiles, which makes him a decently strong character, which is also a real blessing as you'll be using him a lot in his DLC campaign. Kankuro is Gaara's brother and bodyguard, although in time they also become friends. How touching. Kankuro is the first gimmick character in the roster, although he shares his gimmick with a few others, utilizing invincible puppets for attacking while he stands as far away as possible. Kankuro himself is extremely vulnerable. His only available actions are backdashing and substituting, which poses him an interesting challenge. Keep your opponents occupied with your body blockers to never get touched. Child Kankuro only has a single puppet, Karasu, but adult Kankuro has two for extra body blocking and is just substantially better. The puppets themselves aren't immensely strong, but wrangling them and getting good with them makes them a menace regardless, if only for the defensive utility, although the skill level required is pretty immense relatively. Notably, adult Kankuro's awakening reduces him back to one extremely strong and fast puppet, Sasori, some dead villain, although I'm not sure how often Sasori is better than the Double Trouble. The puppet characters are undeniably strong and Kakuro might be the best of them, but it's hard to gauge how good they are in practice since they're absolutely strange to use. Tamari is Gaara and Kankuro's sister, and eventually she marries Shikamaru. That's all I got. She's also a strong character like her brothers. Young Tamari's tornadoes don't cause any knockdown for combo setups, and adult Tamari gets a fast projectile that launches for air combos and awakens to gain another fast projectile and a slow projectile for trapping. She's an all-around monster who follows up her projectile spam very well and is kind of like, I don't know if I'd call her top tier, but she's definitely up there. Raikage A is the Raikage of the village hidden in the clouds. He becomes a friend of the Hidden Leaf during the Kage Summit, I think. He's a cool, fast melee fighter who throws around lightning. His coolest attribute is that when he's awakened, he ends up behind opponents whenever he dashes, which is a unique mix-up, but he kind of just keeps doing what he was doing otherwise. He's a very solid melee fighter for what it's worth, and cool as hell, but that's about it. Killer B is A's brother and the most important gag character in the series. B doesn't seem to want to be a ninja or the Raikage. He's an aspiring rapper despite housing the eight-tailed beasts, this hideous cow octopus thing named Gyuki. Unlike most of the tailed beast vessels, B and Gyuki become fast friends and just want to hang out and make music. He's a charming character. Killer B has two forms, one with his regular sword, one with the shark sword he obtained by fighting a shark man. No, I don't know either. And they only differ in their combo. I prefer the shark sword variant myself, but as a whole, B is basically a worse A. Gyuki is a fairly decent tailed beast though. Tailed beast bomb is always good, and despite Gyuki's clunkiness, his ridiculous spin attack is long lasting and actually does a decent job of countering dashes and approaches. He's not awful, surprisingly, definitely good for a tailed beast transformation. Darui is A's second in command, and following his retirement by the Boruto years would be the fifth Raikage. He's pretty good. His jutsu is 13 tiny projectiles that chase. They're very good bait for substitutions. He has a cool super, and his awakening makes his projectile even better, plus gives him fast charging electric panthers he can throw around. That's both cool as hell and fairly strong. He's potentially the strongest of the hidden cloud guys, and generally just a pretty good character. Tsuchikage Omoki is the third Tsuchikage of the Hidden Rock Village. For some reason he levitates. I guess that's just like the manga old man thing. He throws rocks, multiple of them, which is pretty strong and whatever. But when awakened he gets a fucking laser beam because he has the ability to atomize people for some reason. I don't know that he's a particularly good character, but I do love him. He can also summon these rock lords to use as blockers, and also like he can spam more annoying projectiles when he's awakened. He looks very unexciting, but he's actually kind of sick. Mizukage Mei is the fifth Mizukage of the village hidden in the mist, which had a long-standing feud with the Rock Village before Naruto came and made them friends. A bad low-range secret technique doesn't entirely hold Mei back. Her lava projectile is pretty nasty and leaves lingering lava on the field, and her awakened form goes all out with a lingering steam projectile, fast triple water dragons, and a projectile that comes up from below. She's a surprisingly formidable fighter with a unique trick for shaking off chases. I approve. Mifune is the leader of the Land of Iron, a region of samurai who do not frequently interact with the ninjas, who constantly spaz around outside of their gates, but also they would show up for the big final battle because Naruto made friends with them. He's the coolest, terrible character ever. His jutsu is a dash, his secret move is a short-range sword swing, and he doesn't really get good until he awakens, where he gives a solid stab that shoots a nice projectile that basically covers the whole screen. But man, they went absolutely wild with his animations. His secret technique is just so fucking cool for as awful as it is. Alright, time for some villains. Madara Uchiha was the best friend and bitter rival of the first Hokage and would be killed by him, but by the use of magical eyes would live, die of natural causes, get revived, be so strong that he unzombified himself for a full revival, join Space Mommy, become good, and then die again. It's a standard day in Naruto. Madara has 3 forms. His original live form is the worst. Even then, he has a projectile that bursts into an area of effect, and Fireball, a cool super, and his Rinnegan mode gives him huge disjointed tree attacks, and makes his Fireball shatter into a bunch of smaller fireballs that linger for a little bit. This is the worst one, by the way. Undead Madara is basically the same, but has Susanoo. It gives him an incredible new super, but his Susanoo form is kinda whack, and the giant projectiles it spams spread out from him and tend to whiff if the opponent just stands exactly where they are because they spread outwards and always aim directly at the opponent. So at medium range and above, it's just not gonna hit. The real winner is what could maybe be called a gimmick character, 6 Pass Madara. His super is incredible, his fireballs are strong, his chasing black hole projectile sets up traps nicely, and his awakening is completely wacky. At all times, he's tailed by 5 clones. His jutsu becomes a giant area of effect lightning blast created by the clones firing electricity between each other. Cool. But each direction on the D-pad becomes a command for his clones. A single dashing attack, 4 in a row, a ground pound from above, or an attack from behind. There's no cooldown on this outside of the fact that you can only have 1 active at a time, and Madara is completely actionable during these attacks, giving him immense control over the fight. While he's awakened, he feels basically unstoppable, burning through substitutions and dragging out combos with his clones. It's a really cool playstyle that they should have expanded on and given to a normal character, but honestly that might have completely snapped the game in half. Speaking of cool gimmicks, Kage Otsutsuki is Alien Tree Mommy. She gifted humans chakra to make them into Matrix chakra batteries in Sissy Hypnosis, Cum Monster Tree Jails. She's the final boss of Naruto. This series started with 3 idiot kids fighting Steve Bloom on a bridge. Kage is a pretty average character, slow even, with a fast but low range projectile jutsu and a fast teleporting super that's fairly strong but punishable when whiffed. Kage can also, at any time, change the arena and therefore turn herself into an endlessly wicked ranged character. One flick of the D-pad and you're transported to an icy tundra, a desert, or the inside of a volcano. In the tundra, her basic combo becomes 3 spikes of ice that appear under the opponent from anywhere. Infinite range projectile to mulch substitutes. Although it doesn't chain well as you can't exactly dash cancel into it, at least not very well. And her jutsu just teleports you right on top of opponents and launches them. It's good. In the desert, she sends out slow-moving, tracking tornadoes, 3 at a time, that are basically traps, and gets another projectile just in case. And the lava combo is just a massive area of effect that leaves lingering lava all around her, with her jutsu being a huge burst that leaves even longer lingering lava. Each of these forms would be powerful on their own, but Kaguya can swap between all at will as it suits her to constantly play with opponents. Like a puppet character, she isn't easy, but she may well be the most insane character in the right hands. Nagato is a popular villain that I know nothing about. He literally kills everyone in his alias Pain and then brings them all back because he becomes good when he befriends Naruto. Pain being the puppeted corpse of his dead friend, I think, if I understand it right. As himself, Nagato's got a cool super and a strong area of effect jutsu, literally surrounding himself in energy to fuck off any attempts to approach, and that area of effect becomes way bigger when he's awakened, and he also has a secondary chip damage dealing area of effect just in case, and a projectile, why not? Pain is arguably the worst version of Nagato. His super just isn't as strong even if his area of effect move is identical. They're pretty similar characters, but you'd be hard-pressed to say Pain is better or even cooler, as best I can tell anyway. Conan is one of Pain's friends, I guess. She has magic paper she uses for attacks. Her paper tornadoes are basically identical to Tamari's, medium speed, launch, nice and strong, and she throws out more tornadoes when she's awakened and becomes a paper angel that hovers around really fast and can act out of her tornadoes better. She's maybe not better than Tamari because when awakened, Tamari is just the projectile queen, but she's similar and also quite good for that. Itachi Uchiha is Sasuke's brother and killed the entire Uchiha clan to preserve the peace, and through the manipulation of Tobi, mostly because of the manipulation of Danzo, who I talked about earlier. Itachi is basically a worse Sasuke, at least the better Sasuke's. His primary super whiffs even out of combo, which is fucking insane, but his supers are pretty cool, and his Susanoo has a great projectile. 2 of his projectiles are also Sasuke's, including Fireball, but his clone jutsu is the most interesting. It's It's a slowly walking clone that explodes on contact. It's a great body blocker, a great trap, a great extender. It's a neat trick that probably still isn't as good as just having Fireball on him. Kisame Hogishaki is a shark man. As best I can tell, there's literally no reason that he looks like he does. And as best I can tell, there's also no reason he can turn into an anthropomorphic flying shark. If someone can tell me why this man is a shark in the comments section, I'd really appreciate it, because the wiki did not clarify. He's a pretty standard guy despite being a shark. His shark projectile's good, his secret technique is a lingering area of effect, and when he turns into a shark, for some reason, he can throw around even better sharks and is faster. He's solid, and for some reason, he's a shark. Kakazu, like Kisame, was a member of Itachi's group, and he's some kind of zombie that feeds on human hearts to become immortal. I'm just rolling with it at this point. The design is cool, as is his super, and his projectile has the word fire in it, which is usually a good sign. But he also gets pretty good in Awakening. Projectiles in his combo, a laser, even if being done in the air makes it whiff at close range. He's cool, if not all that unique. Hedon is another immortal because of his ties to Ninja Satan, who he worships, and also he's another member of Itachi's group. He's probably the worst character in the game, in my opinion. His auto combo jutsu is pretty bleh, and his super is very short ranged. He has a very funny awakening, allowing him to make summoning circles, and he can stand in them to spam instant attacks from any range, but it's very minor chip damage for a few seconds while he's transformed, and he is just outclassed by almost every single other character in the game. Deidara is a popular member of Itachi's group because he is cool and uses explosives. He's a standard character in most regards. Good projectile, passable super, but his awakening is pretty cool. I'm a simple man, and a guy riding a dragon made out of C4 is cool. And from on it, he can absolutely spam explosive birds and slow-moving explosive soldiers, plus can end his awakening instantly with massive damage by blowing up his own dragon. It's a very cool awakening on top of, Deidara is a pretty standard, goodish guy. Sasori is the puppet man who becomes Kankuro's puppet in his awakening. His puppet is alone, but is better than Kankuro's in general, I think. I mean, it's a puppet with a projectile, which is pretty fucking great on its own. At least, if you can navigate his puppet well. His awakening makes him puppetless as he turns himself into a puppet, which is interesting. He's pretty decent in this mode, getting a strong area of effect with lingering fire, but it does incur more risk than just playing the puppet game and continuing to do so. The fourth Kage is the reincarnation of Rasa, Gaara's father, who tried his best but ultimately gave up on his son, turning him into a monster when he was young. He's fine. His control over sand gives him disjoints just like Gaara, and he's cool looking, and that's about it. The third Raikage is also named A. No, I don't know why. He's pretty similar to his son A, the second, but less cool. Although his awakened jutsu not knocking down is always a plus for extending combos just a little bit more. The second Tsuchikage is Mu. He had a rivalry with the second Mizukage and some vague friendship with him because they had fun fighting each other, at least from what I can tell in the one fight where you get to play as them against each other, which is a fun dynamic, and eventually the feud kills them both. Mu, for some reason, can atomize people with laser beams. He's really cool, even if he's not actually that great. His jutsu is really slow and locks dudes in a box of light, which cannot be followed up on in any meaningful way. And in Awakening, he just gets a giant lingering sweeping laser beam, which is really cool and probably at least decent, but I don't know what the use case is for it because it is kind of slow and exclusively moves left to right, so if your opponent runs right, they'll probably be okay. The second Mizukage is Gengetsu Hozuki. I kinda already talked about what he was about. He's a pretty standard water ninja. His awakening gives him a quick little mid-range water gun thing. He's fine. Hanzo is the leader of the Hidden Rain and kind of a dark horse for me. He's really cool, his projectile is good, his secret technique is awesome, and I love his awakened mode. The salamanders he summons do small lingering poison damage that applies a small bit of damage over time without knocking down to set up combos or scythe throw spam, and he's just cool for being an absolute mystery character to me. Chiyo is an elder of the Hidden Sand and also Sasori's grandmother, who eventually gives her life for Gaara. She's probably the worst of the puppet characters by far. Her puppets combo enemies towards her, which completely defeats the purpose of the puppets. Her super comes from her instead of the puppets, so I guess that's like the intended use case. But also that means you actually don't keep them at range and use the puppets defensively. It basically means her super's usually off the table and you have to combo as long as you can to not send them towards you. If she's actually secretly good, someone let me know, because she felt like the worst of the puppet characters to me. Zabuza Momochi is the first character in a million years that I actually recognize. He was Team 7's first opponent, an assassin of the Hidden Mist, who would ultimately die after turning his back on his employer. In short, he's a dude with a huge sword voiced by Steve Bloom, and sometimes that's really all you need. Zabuza is very fine. Water Dragon is a good jutsu, he's got nothing else too special going on. He's just a very, very standard character. Haku was an orphan taken in by Zabuza, and despite Zabuza being a ruthless mercenary, he did share a bond with Haku that eventually led to Zabuza's turn after Haku's death. Haku's ice jutsu are cool to look at, and freezing opponents gives him very nice opportunities to charge up. His awakening is kinda unique as he can summon ice walls that serve as blockers. How good this is in player versus player, I have no idea, but it is a unique ability. Yugito Ni is the host of the two-tailed beast, Matabi, who is a cute cat. She's basically a lore character who was killed so that Matabi could be refused into the 10-tailed beast in the climax. Her projectile is pretty neat. At mid-range, it splits into 3, which is probably sometimes useful, and has a cool secret technique. Matabi is a pretty standard tailed beast that can cross up with its fast dash attack. It's not the worst transformation, not the best either. Yagura was the 4th Mizukage, and was a horrible ruler who plunged the Hidden Mist into chaos. All this was entirely because of Tobi's influence. Tobi gets redeemed in the end of the story. He also hosted Isobu after Rin died. Yagura's fine. Isobu's fine. Just like with Rin, nothing special, nothing awful. Roshi was the host of the 4-tailed beast, Son Goku. Dragon Ball reference detected, and like Yugito, died for the 10 Tails plan. He's fine, he's a standard fire character, he gets Fireball, and Son Goku is a standard tail beast. The fire pillars it can summon that rise out towards the opponent are pretty decent, but he's still slow as all the big guys are, and there are a lot of better characters. Han hosted the 5 Tails, Kokuo, a disgusting dolphin horse thing, and like the others, died. Han has a cool super, and Coco is fairly fast for a tailed beast. Maybe a little better than the others in this group, but not by a substantial amount. Utakata is the host of the 6-tailed beast, Saiken, a giant slug monster, and despite being moderately more important than the others, also dies. Utica is okay. His projectile is so slow and tracks so well that it turns into a trap, although his secret technique is very bad. And Saiken is decent, having another fast projectile to crutch on. He's another fine, completely uninteresting character. Fu is the host of Chome, the 7-tailed beast, and also Chome is a giant beetle, so it's my favorite one. Fu was a little more present than the other tailed beast hosts, entering the tuning exams, then dying. Fu is good, solid projectile. Chome throws out tornadoes. Nothing crazy, just a solid character, maybe slightly above average. Kimimaro was the leader of the Sound 5, a group of ninja who worked under Orochimaru and were turned into foreskins by him, like Sasuke, and he dies. Kimimaro is kinda bad. He's got one of those mediocre auto combo jutsus that typically don't help much, and his curse mark form just makes him too unwieldy to chain combos with. The other members of the Sound 5 are substantially more interesting, so we'll just move on. Mecha Naruto was introduced in Naruto Ultimate Ninja Online, a browser-based MMO, but is ultimately basically a character that is exclusively in the Ninja Storm games, and also the anime specials that advertise them, and was designed as a reference to Mecha Godzilla because, you know, it's a Japanese game. You gotta shove Godzilla in there somewhere, you just gotta push him in. Mecha Naruto is a goofy Naruto clone. He has Rasengan, he has Tailed Beast Bomb with a really cool animation, and he becomes Mecha Kurama, who has a sick design, I can't even fucking lie, and shoots a giant laser. I don't know if he's better than the best Naruto, but Mecha Kurama is a very easy way to win into my heart. Hanabi Hyuga is Hinata's younger sister and basically unimportant until Boruto as far as I can tell. She's basically a 5th Neji, but her palm rotation is an advancing spin attack, which is kind of fun. And she gets the normal rotation when she's awakened. I don't know that it's actually better than playing as the other Hyugas, but it is a little more unique, I guess. Finally, the light at the end of the tunnel. Boruto, Uzumaki, Naruto, and Hinata's son. As of Road to Boruto, he's a kid whose dad works too much, and that's all I know. I don't know how he fits into the dinosaur plot. Boruto has 3 variants. His pre-order bonus variant, including in the Road to Boruto version, is the most interesting, giving him a Rasengan that he actually throws, which kinda makes him a better Naruto. The actual Road to Boruto DLC version is mini Naruto. His super is well animated, but I think it's kinda ugly. And the scientific ninja tool is Boruto with a fucking gun. It's probably the worst one with a really mediocre auto combo jutsu. Boruto's fine, you'll get used to him, he's the star of his own fucking DLC, but he does feel like a worse Naruto in almost every way. Sarada Uchiha is Sasuke and Sakura's daughter and Boruto's partner. I imagine the Velociraptor was not a part of the initial equation, but if I'm wrong, someone tell me in the comments, I don't know Naruto lore. Sarada is the final character with variants. Like with Boruto, she was initially a pre-order character, just one with a very cool projectile. I kinda like her. They immediately gave her a cool super that shows off her personality really well. Her actual Road to Boruto form ditches the projectile, which is a shame, but she does get it back and another mini fireball when awakened. So for the most part, it's pretty alright, and she gets another cool super. I became surprisingly a fan of Sarada through this game. Time for the rest of the Sound 5. Jirobo sure is one of them. His foreskin mode can throw big boulders that explode outward, which is pretty strong, but otherwise he's pretty slow and lacks any range. Kidomaru is a Spider-Man with 6 arms. I would guess that he wasn't born that way, but I guess I can't prove it. I actually like this one. Summoning an army of little spiders to chase opponents around is really cool. And while his spider transformation looks like it should be really clunky, all of its moves have decent range, and Kidomaru can fire off a fast, strong projectile through his bow and arrow. He's easily the most fun of the Sound 5 as far as I'm concerned. Sakan and Ukon were a pair of brothers. Ukon, for some reason, lives inside of Sakan and can hop out whenever, which is almost entirely irrelevant until awakening, where he becomes a projectile. He isn't quite Madara, but it is a similar idea. The regular jutsu is interesting, summoning a gigantic wall. It does very minor damage as it goes up, but it's mostly there to buy the pair time to recharge while the opponent is forced to attempt to go around it, unless they're a character who can teleport, which I assume just passes them through the wall and therefore makes it maybe the worst move in the game, but only in that specific matchup. It's an interesting interaction with the game's mechanics, but it isn't really fun to play with or against. It kind of just pauses the momentum so both characters can recharge. Tayuya has a magic flute. Her combo is so short that she loses almost all ability to chain and is automatically kinda bad for it. Her projectile is solid and tracks well, but it doesn't matter when she misses out on so much damage. She does improve on awakening, her projectile's even better, her combo gets better range, but she is an unfortunate casualty of having a very short combo. Mitsuki is the 3rd member of Boruto's squad and also a clone of Orochimaru, one of many apparently, and everyone is just like, yeah, that's fine and normal, I guess. And for some reason, he doesn't tell anyone that Orochimaru is his parent. Mitsuki has Mr. Fantastic stretchy arms, which gives him a longer reach than most, which is nice, and his projectile is pretty strong. His awakening lets his projectiles chain into each other a little better, and he gets lingering bombs. He's not bad, but he falls into a fairly standard role. Momoshiki Orusuki is another space alien who appears in the Boruto movie, investigating what happened to Kaguya and going ahead with the plan when he finds out that she's dead. And as he dies, killed by Boruto, he plants himself inside of Boruto and lives inside of his head rent-free, attempting to gain control. As far as he goes for a character, he's very standard. Momoshiki is the final boss of the Boruto DLC, gets some cool animations on his super, and has a decent fireball, and turns into Satan on awakening for some reason, which isn't something that the other Otsutsukis can do. And he can like throw off a giant ball of dark magic, which is kind of cool, I guess. He's not that special to play as, but he has nice animations. Finally, last and maybe least, is Kinshiki Otsutsuki, Momoshiki's muscle. He's bulky and slow, lacks projectiles, and his huge axe swing is slower than hell. Even his projectile when he awakens is very slow. He just lacks all the qualities that make the characters in this game strong. Jesus Christ, this game has so many fucking characters. I can't believe it. Okay, yeah, let's chop wrap this up. As far as strong points go, presentation is at the top. I just covered the immense roster, and for as many characters just fall into being kind of the same thing as each other, sometimes literally. Every character is uniquely animated, showing off their varieties of fighting styles and even personalities well. Even variants receive minor touches to separate them from each other. The big sell in the visuals are the major story characters' secret techniques. I mean, I've shown plenty, but look at these. The story mode also recreates entire scenes in 3D, and the art style really works, capturing Kishimoto's art well, and being surprisingly action-packed and fluid. Likewise, the QuickTime events and other little interruptions like cutscenes show off a ton of flashy effects. The arenas are all nice. There's a good variety of themes across all sorts of locations. Some of the night ones, like the forest, make really good use of moody moonlighting, and there's a solid amount of detail. I wish battles that were taking place in like the middle of the Hidden Leaf Village had some small cameos or maybe some people moving around, but I think there's a lot of nice variety on display. Every character is fully voiced by their English voice actors. In the English version, I assume the Japanese version does not use the English voice actors, which also adds to the high budget feel. And while not everywhere, there's also tons of little special interactions with certain characters, usually allies depending on team composition, like for the combined secret techniques, and it's all really fun. It makes the game feel like it had a ton of love put into it. So anyway, I read Naruto. Not all of it, the last 120 chapters of it. It's largely a mess, and there are gaps in my knowledge, sure, that might fill in some things, but it was pretty much 120 chapters of fight, and then villain powers up, and then the hero ass pulls to power up, and then they fight, and then a new villain appears, and it's genuinely exhausting. To back up a bit, I think Kishimoto's art is pretty good. Some of the panel-to-panel drawings are a bit low detail, but that's kind of the nature of any long-running manga. One Piece certainly has the same, and Hunter x Hunter barely looks started in its present state. And the action scenes, the splash pages, and the non-human characters clearly had so much effort put in. There's some very incredible detail, especially when it comes to big kaiju battles, big explosions, and the final couple fights. It looks genuinely incredible at times. As for everything else going on, it's hard to even really critique what is, in essence, an increasingly elaborate and long-running fight where the heroes consistently deus ex machina their way out of the villains' deus ex machina-ing their way out of the heroes' deus ex machining. And there's cool bits of all this and that, don't get me wrong. Mike Guy has the best fight in the entirety of this last stretch when he takes on Madara himself without any ninjutsu powers. Kakashi chasing Obito into the alternate dimension to beat his body when he dodges into it is cool. There's a couple other elements. There's parts that are really cool, but largely it's just an ungodly amount of ass pulling to the point that the series is essentially nothing but a continued series of cliffhangers where it seems like the villains have won and then there's an ass pull to save the heroes, and it keeps snowballing into this incomprehensible mess, but also there's kind of an addictive quality to that whole thing. I was hooked just to see how wacky it could get the next chapter, and it usually did. I mean, Naruto redeems Ninja Hitler, Kabuto escapes the mine jail to become good and brings Sasuke back to life, Naruto dies and meets Ninja Buddha, who tells him this elaborate story about his sons getting reincarnated into Naruto and Sasuke and gives him a magic staff. Obito's ghost gives Kakashi the double Sharingan through... I genuinely have no idea how that works. It might be the single biggest ass pull in the whole fucking thing. And there's a lot of them. And the kind of incredible part about this is that in the end, the whole story just builds up to the true ninja way was the friends we made along the way. All this fighting and back and forth and ass pulling and frankly bizarre twists. And the conclusion is, you can be friends with anyone and they'll become good, and people who don't have friends are gonna be evil, and our true power is the friends we made along the way. It's kind of incredible how exhausting it is to get to that point of all points. In 120 chapters, I saw characters transform into entirely new characters, apropos nothing. Kabuto, Orochimaru, and Obito all become good on the whims of them being a Deus Ex Machina to push the story to Tree Mommy. Madara himself somehow gets redeemed in the last breath after dying like 9 times. Hell, fucking Boruto redeems Kaguya in 1 sentence. It's unfiltered insanity. It's barely a story, but honestly, fuck me if it isn't kind of cool sometimes. Maybe the worst part of Naruto's ending is Sasuke. After Madara and Tree Mommy die, there's some nice moments, especially when it comes to Naruto's final talk with his father. And then we had to end on Naruto and Sasuke. It makes sense as a form of narrative symmetry, but it's also like, come on, man. This is so forced and exhausting. Let us be done. Sasuke doesn't need to want to kill Naruto anymore. We can just wrap it. I know you had to do something to fill time to hit chapter 700, but like really, we could have just ended there. The end of Naruto, as it was an interesting experience, a frustrating one, but with nice art and some cool and memorable moments. What I really ended up taking from reading the end of Naruto, though, was basically that I was right, that the series tailspun and never recovered. I also watched Boruto, Naruto the movie. Terrible name aside, it was fine. It's a very impressively animated and scored movie with incredible action sequences, as to be expected for a marketing movie for the end of Naruto and the start of Naruto 2. Every character is still here, but tweaked slightly edition. The aliens coming back feels like we didn't really get a proper de-escalation from the end of the series, but their powers give them plenty of cool opportunities to do flashy shit, and for Naruto, Sasuke, and Boruto to do cool shit back. It's nice to look at and the music is good. What can I say? I like the more slice-of-lifey stuff in the movie too. Like early Naruto, it's actually pretty chill. Boruto's a dumb kid who wants his dad's attention. Naruto and Boruto both come off as gigantic dumb fucks who can't see each other's perspectives, which is much worse coming from Naruto since he was like an orphan and should just be a better dad, but you know. But it does get some sweet moments and a nice payoff in the end. As they repair their relationship. It's a fine movie. It's fine. I think you probably need some vague idea of the mess that is late-stage Naruto, which is a brutal barrier to entry for this 6.5 out of 10 movie. But it was a nice little payoff for me since I had to grind through the manga part of it. Good action, decent story. Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 Road to Boruto is fun. Arena fighters were a sore spot for me after years of awful One Piece games, and honestly, Clash of Ninja 2 still holds my heart. But this game, its mechanics are pretty fun. It's a frenetic and fast-paced little ball of chaos to gain field control and manage resources. It's not Guilty Gear or Tekken 8, it's very simple, and most characters play so similarly that it gets a bit repetitive. But a solid loop is there, and the game's flashiness, especially in the big finishing moves, is so cool that it carries that simplicity. The story of Naruto's endgame is basically insanity, and I actually had a lot of fun discovering the story through this game, in part because Grant filled me in on the gaps that the game has. I think if you went into this blind, you would just, your mind would melt. You kind of need someone to walk you through there. But the cutscenes are really well animated and do their best to make the story function. And the flashy QuickTime events, the occasional really creative fights, it makes Naruto seem like it's cool. It makes the final part of Naruto seem like it should be cool. The roster is maybe bloated, but it's kind of like the ultimate fan service game. I'm sure Naruto fans were thrilled to see that one guy who looks like a background character and can throw logs. I'm sure that was really hype for them. Even I kind of got caught up in the hype despite my lack of care for Naruto. I was just kind of drawn in by the insanity on display in front of me, even though I didn't get to see the dinosaurs. It's a game that's probably notably better for Naruto fans, but honestly it dragged me in and I enjoyed my time with it. It's got so much polish, so much care put into it that I think it's kind of hard not to get dragged in a little bit.